John Hyung plastered his inquiries on as many ghost-related or supernatural forums he could find. In his posts, he stated, "I'm assembling a group for a ghost hunting project. I've already recruited several members, which includes me, security, and another. I just want one more person, preferably one well-versed in the Hmong culture and its rituals. I am a skeptic myself, but I am trying to summon spirits or ghosts to show me a sign. I'd also very much like to get in contact with my late parents. I will be going live and televising the whole thing." One of John's posts went viral, and he received thousands of comments, some of them warning him not to go through with it, while others praised him for his bravery. He also received several private messages begging him not to do it, as ghosts and spirits were not playthings, to which he replied, "I'm sure I'll be fine. I don't believe those things, so this will mainly be for entertainment purposes." Other than that, John hadn't gotten a single response from anyone willing to help him with his project. A week went by. He got home late from work that night and was checking his personal emails, replying to comments and such, when a message popped up on his screen, prompting him to accept it. John clicked accept. The message was from a person named Jay. "How much?" was all it read. John wrote back, "How much for what?" "The summoning for your project," Jay responded. "I'm only taking volunteers," said John. Jay didn't reply after that. Another week went by, and still there was no response from anyone. He was getting desperate now. He had about 10,000 followers in different platforms and wanted to take it to the next level. Night after night, John kept looking at the conversation he had with Jay, wanting to message him so badly. The stranger's status showed he was online, so John sent him a follow-up message. "How much do you want?" asked John. Within a minute, Jay replied with, "I'm asking for $2,000 in down payment first. If it works, I want 10% of what you make per view on that video. And if it doesn't work, do I get my money back?" "Don't worry, it'll work." The night before the event, John had a dream. In the vision, it was still light out. It was a clear day with not a cloud in the deep blue sky. It was neither hot nor cold. He found himself wandering through a sea of pink, purple, violet, and yellow flowers. Their sweet scent surrounded the man wherever he went. Lush green trees lined the horizon. A flock of birds flew overhead, and cicadas rattled their tunes. He didn't know how or why he was there, but it was an extraordinarily beautiful place. Just being there brought a smile to his face. The man was also in Hmong clothes, which he thought is strange. The last time he wore a traditional outfit was when his mom forced it on him as a boy. A hut stood in the distance, drawing him to it. His mom and dad greeted him warmly upon his arrival. Though they were already deceased, John had no recollection of it. His parents were also in Hmong clothes, and looked exactly like they did when they were alive. They exchanged greetings and welcomed him inside. The inside of the hut was nothing like the outside. Even the door had changed. The singular straw door had been replaced by a pair of double doors made from oak. It was beautifully stained in a dark brown color. The living area was spacious and modern. There was a U-shaped sofa around a coffee table with a TV mounted on the wall across it. Directly behind the sofa sat a rectangular table with chairs where the dining area was. On the left of that was a big kitchen with an island and bar stools. Behind the dining area was a wall with a flight of stairs leading down from it. On the wall next to the sofa was a pane of glass. Where the field of flowers should have been were mossy green boulders surrounding a bubbling pond. A tiny waterfall poured into it from above. The three of them sat around the sofa, his mom and dad next to one another on one side, and John on the other. "Son, in life, just because there is money involved doesn't mean you should do something, especially if it's not morally right," his dad said. "John, please listen to your father. If it was anyone else, they wouldn't say anything," his mom added. John didn't know what they were alluding to, so he said, "Mom, Dad, y'all are old-fashioned. In this time period, cash is king. The more of it I have, the more power and respect I'll receive. You are young. There are things you don't yet understand. Please heed my words," his dad pleaded. Before John could reply, his alarm went off, waking him from the dream. That day, he spent most of his time gathering supplies for the summoning. All day he thought about the visions in his dream and of his parents, but he couldn't let go of the idea of the project being a possible hit. If anything, he was hoping it would work, or at least create some sort of wow factor amongst the audience, especially since he was already short $2,000. The summoning was to take place at a well-known funeral home, said to be the most haunted in the Hmong community. It was the perfect place, John thought. He got permission in advance to make sure filming was allowed. That night, they gathered in the main hall of the building. With the incense lit and everything in place, Jay went to work on the summoning, spouting off incantations that to John was practically a foreign language. About 5 minutes in, the summoner abruptly stopped. He stood there, staring blankly across the room. They all looked at one another in confusion. John stepped around to check on Jay. The summoner's eyes were rolled back so far into his skull, only the whites of them were visible. At that moment, the lights flickered and dimmed immediately, drawing John's attention to them. He glanced around the room, realizing he was alone. Confused, the man called for his colleagues, but only silence answered him. He started toward the exit, but stopped when a thumping sound came from behind him. John spun around and was surprised to see a coffin by the wall that wasn't there before. It shook as if something clawed and knocked against the door from inside. Every fiber of John's being screamed at him to get out of there. His heart pounded loudly. All the hairs on his body stood up. The man was so terrified, he'd forgotten what it was like to be a skeptic. Without another second's hesitation, he bolted through the exit door. However, what awaited him outside was nothing but a shroud of darkness. John tried to turn back for the door, but found he couldn't move at all. Somehow, he found himself laying on his back and trapped inside a dark and stuffy box. After a futile moment at kicking and screaming for help, he broke into tears. That was when he heard a chorus of wails from what sounded like 100 people, along with the drum and cling playing the unmistakable funeral tune. The door to the box slowly creaked open on its own. John hesitantly stuck his head out and regretted it at once. He confirmed he was indeed inside a coffin as he suspected. Across from him were gaunt, pale, gray-faced figures in the crowd. They were in their traditional funeral attire and wailing uncontrollably. The drummer and cling performer were no exception. As the death song played, the crowd made their way to John with the arms outstretched and still wailing. The man tried to climb out and make a run for it, but the coffin fell off the stand, pinning half his body outside of it. The ghouls surrounded him, their cold, dead hands clutching and pulling him from every direction. John could do nothing but close his eyes and scream from the top of his lungs until everything faded into darkness. "Wake up, John! Wake up!" a male voice called out in the dark abyss. A man in a police uniform shook John firmly. When he didn't wake up, the policeman smacked him lightly in the face. His eyes finally shot open, and the man freaked out. Screaming, he swung and kicked at the police officer, as if fighting for his life. The officer jumped back, as did the others. John crawled away from them. "Whoa, easy, John. We're not gonna hurt you," the officer said as calm as possible in a non-threatening posture. The man looked confused and hysterical. His eyes darted back and forth between the others. Then he shifted his gaze around the room. "Do you know where you are?" the policeman asked. John didn't respond and kept looking around the room. "Don't think he knows who we are or where he is," whispered a man in a t-shirt. "Yeah, he looks pretty spooked," said a pudgy man in a polo shirt. The officer shushed them without taking his eyes off John. "I'm Officer 2, he said. Then he pointed to the man in the t-shirt and introduced everyone as if they were meeting for the first time. "That's B, that's J, and..." 2 paused, trying to remember the heavier man's name. "Kong," the man in the polo shirt cut in. "Right, Kong. the officer said as if he almost knew the answer. The four men continued talking to him and were eventually able to calm him down. However, John still wasn't talking to any of them, nor did it look like he recognized them. His behavior resembled that of a young child. Two ended up taking him to the hospital while the others contacted the Hmong family. When his family visited him at the hospital later that night, he was very much the same with them as he was with the others. The doctors found nothing wrong with him and recommended a behavioral specialist. Two told the family about what happened and even showed them the video. In the recording, the men stood around one another as Jay chanted his shamanic incantations. Suddenly, one of the fluorescent light bulbs popped as the others flickered and dimmed. It was the moment John's strange behavior started. He ran around shouting and screaming like a madman, while the others tried to calm him down. Eventually, he passed out, which was when the video ended. The footage went viral since it was a live stream, but John was never the same after that night. For a year, his family desperately sought help for him, but their efforts were in vain. His family also tried reaching out to Jay, but his social media account was deleted. John mysteriously disappeared one day. The Mua couple sat next to each other by their dining table. Mr. Mua held his teary-eyed wife as she eyed a picture of them with a frail young boy in a hospital bed. He was hooked up to various tubes and machines. The boy looked no older than 4. The doorbell rang. They looked at one another and made their way to the front door. Mr. Mua opened the door as his wife stood beside him. "Good day, Mr. and Mrs. Mua. Sorry for the delay, but I told you this would take some time. As promised, I've brought your son back," Jay said with a sinister smirk. Standing beside the older man was John in a mismatched outfit, and for the first time since that fateful night, he spoke. "Mommy! Daddy!" he said with a smile. That's it for this episode. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. The link is in the description if you'd like to make any purchases from the Pocket Shop. Thanks for listening.